people. So one thing that often happens is that when we have a client that they're set up and we've got everything just right for them coming at there so that we have them just right so that they're not coming ahead of convergence, well, then sometimes they just move a little bit, but we still get a shot that's got some great expression and we want to be able to use it. So in this case, one of the fellow people in Headshot crew had this happen, and she wasn't sure how to fix it, so she sent it to me, and I'm going to share with you how I would fix it in this situation, as well as a couple other things on this shot. But to first just go over the element of the ahead of convergence element. So I'm just going to take off what she had here of this little bit of smoothing the skin. And I'm just going to actually get rid of that layer for right now. So from scratch here. So how do I know that this was ahead of convergence? Well, ideally, the pattern that we want to see on the head is, and if I go over here real quick to, let's just go to my own site here real quick. And she has it somewhat covered, but you can see it goes from dark to one single highlight to darker. You can see on the nose, it's having darker on the sides and a single highlight in the middle. What we see in this shot is we see dark, light, dark, light, dark. And we see on the nose two beams on the side, and then in the center it's darker. So that's how we know that they've gone ahead of convergence. If they went, it was much wider swath here of it being darker, they'd be very far ahead of it. But right now it's just, barely there. So it's possibly salvageable. So here's what we do. I'm going to first go, and before doing anything, I'm going to first notice just a little bit of the color difference here. So I see that she's looking almost green toned in here. Here it's looking pinker. So first, real quick, I'm just going to address that. For me, what I like to do for quick and easy is with those two different tones, I make a copy of my layer. I go up here to Camera Raw Filter, and I'm just going to look at this part here because I don't feel like this is quite the right color. That greenish tone is more bothersome to me than the pinkish magenta tone up here. So to cancel out that green, I'm going to bring up my magenta a little bit. And now looking at that here, I'm feeling better about it. The other thing I can just see is if I clicked on here and saw what happened with overall of just bouncing it on the background there, sometimes it works. In this case, it seems like it made it way too warm, so we're just going to go back to as shot. And I'm just going to slightly just, again, be concentrating on the tone in the neck there. So that I'm getting rid of that green. Okay, that green cast seems okay. I'm actually doing this on my laptop right now, so exactly the color being perfect is questionable, but we'll see. Okay, then I'm going to mask that layer off. I'm going to invert that, and then I'm just going to paint in on this layer. Press X to change this from black to white of whatever this is. D is default, we'll bring it to that. X swaps it back and forth. Okay, and so I can just paint in this. And if I want to see exactly where I'm painting this in, I can hit my, what usually would make it a ruby lith, but why exactly it's making it go black, I'm not sure. I'd have to go back and check. Never seen it do that before. It usually goes nice and red for me, but I can see exactly where this is painting in on my mask here, coming around. You could do a really nice, very specific selection and stuff like that, but when I'm doing this, it's quick, easy. It's just those little bits of the white balance that's changing just subtly there. So I just have it have a nice feathered edge there. Switch it so it's not coming onto the face there. All right. Bring my zoom in, just look a little closer. Make my brush smaller. Bring in here, that bit. And there. And just see, because I got in here, I'll do is I'll lower my opacity on there. You can see up here, but if I just press 3, we'll bring it to 30%. Swap again, and bring this in just so it doesn't bring that pink onto there too much. Okay, I press my backslash button so I can see again. And now we can see This is turning that layer off. She's looking a little green down here. Now I'd say she's in a closer tonal range to what her face was. So now that we have that, now I can move on, because that was just driving me bonkers. You can choose to do it where you're going to go and keep every single layer as you work. For right now, just for the sake of this with the video, I often, once I have something the way I like it, I know it's destructive editing or whatever, but it's the way I do things, just to make it so it's back from the days of having slower computers, just doing it this way of habit. So I flatten. You don't have to flatten. It's just me. Okay, I'm going to copy my layer. Going in here. Now, if you want to know how to make these different actions that I have in here, you can see my video on making your headshots pop. It shows all the specifics of it with it there, but I can also, once I've done it, show you what the actual settings are here. So if I just hit highlights, okay, if you want to see what is under the hood there of what's that, if you look down here, we've just got a curve that I've adapted here. And at the point of inflection here, it was at 187 approximately. It's about 220, so it makes it just rise up just a little bit there to bring those up. So I'm going to click on where that mask is, got my brush, and again, I'm at home with my laptop, so I don't have my nice little Wacom tablet to make it nice and gentle. But I can look at this and see, okay, this area here, this is where you're seeing that bit of darkness that I need to take out. So I'm going to go and apply this. Right now it was still left my brush from 30%. If I just type in 100, it'll bring it on full in there, and then that'll be that full amount. And we can see again by pressing this backslash there that I can see exactly where my mask is at this point. Which this is just throwing me for a loop that my mask right now is not on a ruby lith, but I'll look that up afterwards. If you've seen my other videos, that's what the way it usually goes, is kind of this pink type of color, but it is what it is. Okay, so I can see that with that there, even though I've hit up that exact spot, and I can also see when I'm looking here, if I look closely, it goes a little bit beyond even where the darkness was there. So I'll want to actually, I switch my opacity down a little bit, and I'm going to bring this in just a little closer back to where this was. Okay. Just to get that fade a little closer to the actual area there. Okay, and we can see our before to after. But you can see it's still a little bit darker there. So you can either choose to just hit the highlights action again and go in and kind of paint it in exactly in that little middle section there where you want it. To bring that up, bring my opacity back up here, paint that in. Or the other option was that on that original layer I had, I could make the opacity, I have it set to go to 30% for doing that with that particular adjustment layer there, but you can bring that up or down and bring it to taste right there in the layer without having to do that secondary one of it. So you can see just dialing it up, dialing it down of how we're bringing that in. Okay, so I've just about got that in now, about where I want it. Okay, that takes care of that one. Now I can get rid of that other one, delete that. Okay, now I'm going to address her nose. I'm not going to try to do it in the exact same layer because I may need different amounts with it. Now that I'm looking at this here, I still feel like it needs to probably come up just a little bit brighter. But we want to see, you know, here's too much because that's making a hot spot on her. Don't want that. That bit there. Okay. And we'll be able to actually correct this even more in just a few other steps. Okay. Then I add on my other highlights. Come on in here. And then we're going to attach in here. Now you could very specifically go in and go select. And hold on, let me make sure I'm on the layer that this is. Select color range. And I can change to exactly what it is that I want. Bring this, I'm going to make it localized color clusters. of being in that center part. I can check of none, just seeing here what are the parts that I want. So it's this tone, this darker tone that we want in here. Okay. Now when I go to my black mat, I can see that it's got there, but that's way too much of a range, and too much of it is all going there. So to limit the color tones that I want, go with the fuzziness of bringing that down in here. Okay, so it's going to limit it more to the range of the color that I wanted it to select to. And going ahead, bringing the range so that it's, again, localized clusters there. It's only going to be limited to that nasal area there. Okay. Now, from there, if I just went ahead and applied it only into these areas, it wouldn't necessarily be exactly what I want it to look like. It would be just kind of jagged edges there. I'd want to go select, and then I'm going to go modify and feather that. And let's do it by 5 pixels there. I was just guessing, but it looks pretty good. Okay, now I'm going to go up to my highlights layer there, have my brush, have it turned on to white, and I'm going to brush that effect in there, down that middle section of the nose. Okay, and as we saw before, that 30% really wasn't quite enough for this issue that we were facing here. Okay, I'm getting on that center part of it there, and if I zoom out, it's kind of hard to tell right now because I've got the marching ants going around, but if I hit Command D, I can briefly kind of see where that is, and turn the effect on or off, and then if I wanted my marching ants back, I hit to just have Command Z until my marching ants come back there. But I'm going to hit Command D so I don't see that. And so it's definitely getting closer. So you can see before of that darkness to here. Okay, so that's taking care of a lot of it. I'm going to look, and we've got this center part. Part of that's just a freckle down there. Don't want it to be too bright. And it's just kind of doing it up or down to taste, as you see with it. Okay, and then I may even just again make another highlights layer. Go in, kind of paint that in just down that center line there of getting what would be the natural highlight plan of the face with it there that you would expect. Okay, the other area that you'll find will get darker than you want when they're ahead of convergence is this inner eye portion here. Okay, so you named it, you guessed. Oop, I'm going to do another highlight layer. But this one is going to be a little more subtle. I'm not going to do it for my 100% there. I'm going to hit 5 for 50% there, just to kind of build it up as I go along. And it'll be these inner corners of the eyes that you'll get that bit of shadowing that you don't want. Okay. And I also have a little bit of it here. You still want to be maintaining that overall bit of the highlight should be down the face. We still want the quadrants, that this is going to be brighter than there, but we still need to expect that you'd have some of that brightness going down the center line here a bit. So I take my another layer of highlight there, bring that little bit in here, little bit here, and there we go. Okay. Perfect. All right. So if we go and we see, just for the sake of things, I go back to history and see before to our after. That looks a lot closer right now. Now, how do we get it even closer? Well, again, you can do the thing where I hit Shift Command Option E, and it just gives me a stamp of that layer so that anything I work with here, it's going to bring those textures and stuff down from it. Or I could just flatten the layer. But for right now, we'll leave it so that those are all there. My favorite tool of all in this is my patch tool. So here I want to bring it so that this is going to look more consistent of the texture across here. So I'm just going to take it here, bring it over, and do that. Now at first, it's not going to look right. It's going to look weird. I'm going to do it a few times, sampling the different parts here. This is going to help blend that portion that we had there. Now I'm going to bring the opacity down a bit. Again, doing it to taste. So you can see from before where we still have that little bit of darkness, and now it's blended and looks just like consistent skin for that. It's going to be the same thing I'm going to do here, but at the same time I also want to maintain some of the character of this lady's freckles, because assuming that's something that she really likes about herself, which is great, we want to keep that. We don't want to just assume that you want to get rid of that. And if we got rid of all of it down the center of the nose, that's going to look inconsistent with what's going on the sides here. So, all right, I liked what I had there. If I just copied that same layer over, I would just be doubling that opacity. That's not what I want. I'm going to hit Shift Command E, and that makes a stamp of that leather layer there. Okay, now I will go through here, and again, it'll look weird at first. We know that, we acknowledge that. Going through in here, getting these bits and pieces. Okay. And here, this even still looks a bit dark to my taste, so I'll bring that in here. Okay. Now I'm going to first just try dialing it back. But dialing it back isn't quite bringing those freckles back the way I want necessarily. So the other possibility is to go like that. And then once you have that lightness going on, because the overall colors have changed, if you want to bring back in some of that texture of the freckles, you can go to a different spot of the nose and get those little bits here and there. But the key thing is to copy that layer so that then you can decrease the overall opacity of your freckle add-in layer of the texture. Oh, I didn't like that one. I want more of the rounded bits here so that it's going to get that nice blended look to it. Bringing back in the skin texture. And I'm just looking for what looks consistent across the board there. Okay, that's looking pretty good, but just for that little sense of blending, bring my layer down a bit. Okay, now we're starting to look considerably better, but I feel like this looks just a little too severe here. Let that there. I like the way that this edge is looking better up here. So I hit Shift, Command, Option, E. Come on up here. I do that a lot. And I'm just going to go in and try to blend this just a bit. So in this case, I'm going to try going down the side here, just that little bit, because I wanted to bring the lightness out into the darkness here of the blending. And that didn't quite go as I hoped on that part. And sometimes it's just a game, seeing what works with it there. And this is going to be, this affects the contouring and stuff like that, just like with makeup, of the shape and stuff like that of how the nose appears. And we want to still maintain her natural shape, assuming that the client wants that. Okay, now we're starting to get a bit of a look of like a stripe here. Not something we want. I'm going to go up, bring into here, just that little bit of consistency. Okay. All right, then yes, I'm going to drop the opacity. You've got it. Okay, so we can see from before to here of that little bit of both the line that was here, that's taken care of with this, as well as just adding that little bit more softness in here to this edge. I may even go in and do it just that little bit more to soften that up. And since I want it lighter, I'm going to a lighter section now. Into there for the blending. Okay, let's see that. And bring it back in. Okay, that's definitely softer. I'm going to overall hit Layer, Flatten Image. I'm going to hit Command A, Command C, so I've copied it. I want to see back from what we originally had, because I may want to integrate in parts from before if we've gone too far. Okay, get rid of her smooth skin layer that we had. Okay, so here was before, here is after. Trying to make sure we didn't lose any really critical freckles that are specific to the individual. Like this little one right here, I'm probably going to want to bring that back in from that previous layer just a little bit so it's consistent with the individual. But otherwise, I feel like the shape of her nose has been maintained. Haven't changed that too much. Okay. I feel good about that. It's just that little space right there that I want to bring that freckle back. So I'm going to mask from that top layer that we added in. Get black. And I'm going to look for where did that freckle hide. Here, we'll see again. I even stick my finger right on it on my screen. I know you can't see that, but it's right here. I'm sticking my finger on it to hold my place. And then I just go and paint it in just a bit here. And I didn't do it at full opacity because, remember, it was dark there to begin with, so we just want it to be a hint of it there. And I'm going to do a really low opacity brush to paint it out there of just that bit. Okay. And then it needs to be a little more specific to just that one freckle. What I may do is kick that one to curb. Just know that I need one. Oopsies. That I need to just get that one back out of there. Hold on. And 100% there. Okay. And instead, so that we get some of the consistent tonality from that one that was above here, but bringing it in here, I might just go like this, boom, whoop, and using that. And might be a little too obviously similar, but I'm looking at it super close. Now I think it looks pretty good. Okay, great. So now we have pretty much adjusted and fixed that whole element that was the thing of ahead of convergence, no longer seemingly ahead of convergence. If you want, you can go ahead and even bring in some additional shadow on the side of if you want that more extreme fall off. It's up to you of whether you want that or not. You can just paste that in here. Whoop, bring my shadow layer above there. I think it might be a bit of overkill. A lot of times people just really try to overdo the amount of seeming fall off there. But in this case, it does seem to give even more dimensionality there. You don't want to do it super heavy-handed there. That's why I have it set by default on my action to 30% there. Again, if you want to know how to make the shadows action there, you can check that other how to make your headshots pop video that I made. Now the other thing is we made that lighter. When you go ahead and make something lighter like that, you lose a lot of saturation in it. So I've made an action to add back our saturation and in small amounts there. So I'm just going to make sure that I paint some of that saturation back in. You can see exactly where I'm doing that. I can do the same thing here along that bridge of the nose. that little bit on the chin. Even looking at that chin, I'm saying to myself, that could probably use just a little more highlight there, so it's not quite as dark there. And for myself, probably just a bit more in here, because the whites of the eyes were looking a little gray. But let's see, that may have been taking it too far. Yeah, too far. Bring that down a lot. Just a hint. Okay. The other thing to notice is when you're shooting is I always look right here at the pupils in the first shots that I'm taking. The thing I want to avoid the absolute most, other than being ahead of convergence, is that I don't want them to risk being uplit. I want this, yes, filling in crevices and stuff like that, but I'd always rather be able to at least fix that in post by lessening the crevices than having it be uplit, which is just not a good thing. And we're borderline uplit here because, as you can see, there's almost virtually no shadow below our nose here at all. Okay, so when I'm looking at this, I tend to like to see that my lights are, the bottom light is slightly less bright than the top two lights. It's not something I'm going to go and fix in post. It's something that you have to be doing when you're shooting. Okay, right. So then if we're working towards making this a portfolio-worthy shot, what are the other things to hit on? All right, well, let's assume that I liked my overall stuff here. I'm going to say that that bit of the shadow was maybe just a little much. Let me see here, without, there with. That's not too bad. And I actually might bring in just a hint more shadow, lower opacity on it, over to here. Because now, overall, she's just pretty darn hot. I mean, she's a lovely lady, but that's pretty bright up there. Might be a bit more than we need overall. So and it's great when you do that, and it's not even on the above the layer, so you can't see what you're doing. Okay, so I moved it up. Let's see. So you can see it's really subtle, but it's there. Okay, and just bringing in that little bit. Same thing on her nose here. We don't need it to be like crazy bright. Okay. Great. I feel good about that now. Feel like her cheeks could probably use a little more saturation. Gonna bring that in 100%. Boom. And if it doesn't seem like enough, you can either, if it was overall, you could feel like dialing up what I had as the preset, or you could go and do another layer of it and just apply it to the spots you need. Because, like, for example, this looks pretty rosy now. Don't quite need that. I'm going to hit D for my default, make sure I'm on the actual mask layer, make my opacity lower, and dial down that bit of the there. Good. Okay. And to my shadow layer here, just that little bit. Bringing that down. Okay. Now, what else to do? All right, well, it was brought up in the forum, what to do about the hair. Let's say I love everything I had, everything else done. Some people will go, keep all those layers. I will flatten for now, because that's me. I know some people are going, she flattened the layers. That's me. Before I do that, I'm going to slightly bring it so that this isn't quite so extreme. I made a copy of that other layer. Bring that back. I know it looks weird at first. Always will. Bring that. Okay. And now we dial those back in. Okay. There we go. All right. Now, hair. So the part that I think is wigging some people out was having this little bit come out. Different ways you can do it. You can either say, I'm going and saying, I love having the little pieces, it gives it reality and stuff like that. Let's add more. Or it's the let's clip that one and figure things out. So that one, I'd say, it's already kind of not super together. So my gut instinct is, let's stitch that one first. So you can always first just see, using the spot healing brush, does it do anything? See if it does its job well first. See if AI is helping us in this world. Huh! And it did. Excellent. Otherwise, what I could have done is just gone and clone and done with the edges. Now, the other part is we have this kind of extreme little bit here. I'm not super keen on that, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to shape it by using Liquify. Pop into Liquify. Come on here. I'm going to bring this part out just a bit. And this part in a little. The bigger I make this, the softer that change is in areas. Okay. But what's nice about this is it still keeps the reality of these hairs on the edges of it, so it doesn't end up looking like helmet hair. Okay. Can bring these in here. Okay. And so we can see from before to after. Okay. So last things there. So say we love that. I flatten. Come up here. Look for my few stray hairs. Keep some of your baby hairs. Don't get rid of all of them here, because then it just looks weird and not real. Nope, doing a recording for the headshot crew people. It's okay. Not a big deal. And these ones where they're just coming out and they're light like that, that's distracting to the line of it to me. So I fix that. Okay. Look and see here where it's coming in the plane of the face. A little white one there. Bingo. See how this goes against the grain of the rest of the hairs? This one, I would see what we could do. I'm going to copy here, make that new layer. See how it first does, just doing it the old-fashioned way, and luckily it does a pretty good job. Oop. And just going through here so that the ones that are completely at odds, kind of perpendicular to the way the hair would be going, working on getting those out of there. And ones like this that are really bright and distracting. But you have to think all along, what way would you want the hair to actually go? So you couldn't get it to do that during the shoot. That's one thing. But then when you're doing it in post, you still need to think of the way hair actually goes. Even if it's in the ideal way that you want it, you have to think of how hair acts. So here we've lost some of that texture in there. So what I will try to do is, depending on the way, first we'll just try the good old-fashioned patch tool. Going in here and bringing it, and that wasn't too shabby. That worked pretty well. Okay, good. Great. And I would actually keep most of this going on here. Make a copy of my layer. I'm just going to slightly bring the edge of that. See, but that's even too precise there. So I'll come back, bring this out a little, and bring it back in just a bit so it doesn't look like it's too harsh. There we go. So we have a little bit of those natural bits of hair going off to the side. Okay. And let's just check the very tip top of her head. Yeah, I can see where you did your own work before on this, before you got it to me. I'm trying to make the stuff more uniform because we can see how this is going boop in here. Not the best, but we'll work with it here. So in this case, because it's that kind of funky cut off bit, I'm going to just be bringing this in here. Make my layer. Bring this down. And I'm going to work on cloning this in right now, and then I'll show you how we add the convincing hairs to bring this back in. Okay, went a little too close on that one for my tastes. Okay, I'm gonna come on here. All right, good, these were left. So how do we then make that look convincing again? Well, there's a couple ways. We go in and do the draw the hair method, and the other way I will show you right now, which is the faster way to at least to try first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a spot that did have nice little controlled wispies. Copy that, just that section. Control C. I'm going to bring said piece over to where I want it. Rotate. Get it approximately in the location I want. And around here, edit, transform, warp. Now I can move this piece and get it to kind of rotate around, similar to the liquefy type of feel that you've had before. Okay. And what I often will do is also decrease the opacity so I can see where this is coming at that point compared to where my hair was before. Okay. So now I can see that little wispy edge that I want to be able to paint in. Okay. I'm going to bring that up. And now I'm going to change my layer. First I tried just doing to darken. Okay. I hit Command, actually I hit Enter to lock that in, hit Command D. Okay. So I'm going to make my layer to darken. Okay. Now, I don't want it to have a bunch from, oopsies, where did that piece go? There's my piece, hold on. Let's go back. Okay, we have our piece here. Sorry, everybody. Okay. Try that again, Sam. Take our spot. Copy. Control C. Control V. There we go. I don't know what it did before that. Okay. Rotating upwards. Bring the piece in here. Decreasing my opacity to see, am I in my general area that I want before shaping? And around here. Okay. Edit. Transform. Warp. Bring this in around. Okay, so we can see that that edge is there. Great. Now I switch my layer to darken. So in this case, those little wispies were so light that we barely get an effect at all, it seems like, from it. Just that tiniest bit. That might not have been quite enough, because we picked that kind of grayish tone area, but that's okay. What I will do is a couple things. First, I can cheat a little by adding another one over top of it and making that go, oh, we don't want multiply. Hold on. Normal. Okay, so got that there. Apply my mask. I'm going to invert my mask and just try to paint that in, just those little bits here that we had of the ones to be coming in here. But you saw, it's just a little too light for this working for us, because this had that bit of highlight there. So, bummer. But it means we can do two things. We can try one more section that might be a little bit darker and around here. Or at this point, I'll just show you the demonstration of how to add more hair and make it look real. So I'm going to add an empty layer. Take my brush, make it, super tiny, like 3 pixels. Okay? Making sure it's an empty layer. I will now hit Option, and much easier with a Wacom tablet at home, there. And 3 seems actually still way too thick. I'm going to make it even smaller. Let's go with a single pixel. Okay. And I'm going to do, and I know right now it looks totally fake. It should. And I'm resampling time and time again. Get a couple, because hairs are not all exactly the same color. I'm just going kind of the way the hair would normally have gone out there. I'll even get some lighter ones to bring into it. To bring that little bit up in there so it's believable. Again, much easier when I've got a stylus. But we're just getting those hairs. And if you do it and you don't like it, Command Z it. As you can see, I've done a gazillion times during this. Okay. Oh, too high. This is a good reason why you don't want to have to mess up what you had before of the nice little pieciness that you did. Because you can see, it's kind of work intensive of doing this part, but sometimes it's just worth it. All right. May not be exactly perfect, but it gets the concept. So now, on this layer, I'm going to go to Blur, Gaussian Blur. And now, depending on how much or at depth of field or not you had, to make it look consistent with the other hairs, you add more or less blur to this. Okay? So you can see, here we can see the individual little bits of it. Here it's too blurry, that would be not consistent with the other hairs. But now, that's pretty good. Of the level of blurriness consistent with the other natural hairs down there. Maybe just a little bit more. Okay. And now, I can then bring my opacity down just a little. And now when I zoom out, it doesn't look quite as severe with it. It'd be vastly better had they not been all taken out in advance, but at the same time, it's close enough now. Okay. If you're really spending a lot of time on it, you go in and just perfect that, but get the idea of the technique. And that's pretty much it at this point on there. So I hope you found that helpful. And if you have any questions, let me know. Thanks. Bye.